Halloween wasn't just a low-budget slasher. It was a genre-defining fever dream, stitched together with duct tape, desperation, and raw cinematic nerve. What looked like a sleek, terrifying classic on screen was barely holding together behind the camera. We're talking a cast who wore their own clothes, a villain born from a $2 mask, and a director who scored the film in just 3 days. This is the unpolished, untold truth behind the scream. These are 20 weird facts about Halloween that even horror diehards don't know. And just wait until the bonus fact. It involves an uncredited master of suspense that nobody saw coming. Let's pull back the sheet. 1. Michael Myers' mask cost $1.98. And it wasn't supposed to be scary. The most iconic mask in horror history came from a thrift store on Hollywood Boulevard. Production designer Tommy Lee Wallace bought a William Shatner Captain Kirk mask for just under $2. To make it frightening, they widened the eye holes and painted it white. That blank, emotionless stare wasn't planned, it was an accident. Wallace later said, "The emptiness of the expression was exactly what we needed. It wasn't angry, it wasn't sad, it was just nothing." They tried other masks, including a clown version, but nothing creeped people out like Shatner's deathly stare. What audiences didn't know was that Michael Myers was wearing the face of Star Trek's most beloved captain, just repurposed into pure nightmare fuel. 2. Jaime Lee Curtis got the part because of her mother's Scream Queen legacy. Jaime Lee Curtis was just 19 and had never acted in a movie when she auditioned for Halloween. But what caught producer Deborah Hill's attention? Her last name. Jamie's mother was Janet Leigh, famous for her blood-curdling shower scene in Psycho. Hill and Carpenter felt casting Janet Leigh's daughter was a poetic nod to horror history. But Curtis still had to earn it. She gave a performance so grounded it gave the chaos around her emotional weight. She brought vulnerability but also strength. Carpenter said that by the end of the shoot, she wasn't just a newbie, they had unknowingly created the first true final girl, not nepotism or cinematic destiny. 3. Donald Pleasence took the role for his daughter. Donald Pleasence, the classically trained British actor with Bond villain credentials, seemed like an odd choice for a low-budget horror film. So why did he say yes? Because his daughter was a fan of Carpenter's previous film, Assault on Precinct 13, and begged him to take the role. Pleasence didn't understand the script. He admitted as much, but he believed in Carpenter. What he brought was gravitas, his performance as Doctor. Loomis added psychological depth to the film's supernatural fear. Without him, Halloween might have just been another teenage slasher. With him, it became something mythic, a battle between good and unstoppable evil. 4. The film had no budget for a score, so Carpenter did it himself. Most horror films hire orchestras or composers. Carpenter had a synth and 3 days. That's it. With limited resources, he leaned into minimalism. He wrote the now iconic 5/4 piano riff, inspired by his father's rhythm exercises. The result? A haunting, pulsing dread that became Halloween's heartbeat. Critics at the time didn't even mention the music, but audiences couldn't forget it. Carpenter later said, "If you can't afford to show fear, you have to make them hear it." Not just a cost-saving measure, the score helped define modern horror soundtracks and is still imitated decades later. 5. Michael Myers' name came from a real person. Michael Myers wasn't a random name. It came from a real-life British film distributor of Assault on Precinct 13. As a thank you, Carpenter used Michael Myers as the name of The Shape, the film's faceless killer. But the real Michael Myers had no idea until the film was released. Imagine hearing your own name associated with a silent, unstoppable killer. It wasn't personal, just practical. 6. The whole movie was shot in just 20 days. Most films take months. Halloween took just 20 days. With a budget of only $300,000, Carpenter had to move fast. The crew worked 6 days a week, shooting up to 13 pages of script a day. Actors changed clothes quickly, and sets were redressed to look like different homes. To make it worse, they were filming in springtime California and pretending it was October in Illinois. No fall leaves, so they painted fake ones and reused them in every shot. Every corner cut was a gamble, but that pressure created the gritty, urgent feel that made Halloween terrifyingly real. 7. The Steadicam shots were groundbreaking and improvised. The film opens with a chilling point-of-view shot of young Michael committing his first murder. But back then, Steadicam rigs were too expensive, so the crew used a makeshift rig and rehearsed the shot for hours. 8. Many actors wore their own clothes, including Jaime Lee Curtis. With no costume budget, the cast often brought their own wardrobes. Jaime Lee Curtis famously bought Laurie Strode's entire outfit from J.C. Penney for under $100. Other cast members wore whatever was in their closet. This forced realism worked in the film's favor. The characters didn't look like movie actors. They looked like people you went to school with, your classmates, your friends, your babysitter. That grounded authenticity made everything feel 10 times scarier. 9. John Carpenter saw Michael Myers as a force, not a person. In Carpenter's eyes, Michael wasn't a man. He was the embodiment of pure evil. In the script, he's not even referred to by name, just the shape. Carpenter wanted Myers to be a blank slate. No backstory, no motive, no emotion. The less you knew, the scarier he became. Carpenter said that philosophy set Halloween apart from other slashers. The terror didn't come from understanding Michael, it came from not understanding him. A blank face in a dark hallway, breathing heavily, stepping silently. That's all it took to feel dread. 10. The blood in Halloween is practically non-existent. Despite being called a slasher, Halloween has almost no blood, very little gore. Most kills happen off-screen or with minimal effects. Why? Budget reasons, but also a focus on psychological horror. Carpenter knew that what you imagine is more terrifying than what you see. Suspense came from staging, music, and timing. The audience filled in the blanks. Ironically, later horror films copied Halloween, but added more gore, missing the point that its power came from restraint. 11. The crew reused the same handful of fall leaves over and over. Halloween was filmed in sunny Pasadena, California. No fall foliage in sight. Production designer Deborah Hill and her team painted thousands of fake leaves and scattered them for every scene. After each take, they collected them all and reused them in the next. In one shot, you can even spot palm trees in the background, something Illinois definitely doesn't have. But the illusion worked. A few painted leaves turned California into Haddonfield. 12. Carpenter didn't want a sequel, he thought the story was over. After Halloween's success, producers begged for a sequel, but Carpenter was reluctant. He never intended it to become a franchise. To him, the story was simple. Evil appears, terrorizes, then disappears. Done. When he finally agreed to write Halloween 2, he admitted feeling stuck. "I had no idea what to write," he said. So he invented the family twist: Laurie and Michael are siblings. That idea became central to the sequels, but Carpenter later called it a mistake. Not expansion, compromise. The boogeyman should have stayed a mystery. 13. The sound of Michael's knife? A kitchen knife stabbing a watermelon. Foley artists had to get creative. There was no budget for fancy sound effects. To create the stabbing sound, they stabbed watermelons over and over. Sometimes cantaloupes, sometimes audio from butcher shops. The result? A wet, squishy crunch that made every kill feel real even when you didn't see it. That one sound made audiences flinch, and it came from fruit salad. 14. Nick Castle played Michael Myers, and didn't act at all. Nick Castle wasn't an actor, he was Carpenter's college buddy visiting the set. When Carpenter needed someone to wear the mask and move like the shape, he asked Castle to step in. His only direction, just walk. Castle later said he based Michael's walk on curiosity, like someone watching ants. That robotic movement became the standard for slasher villains. Jason, Ghostface, even Leatherface owe a debt to Castle's calm, creepy pacing. It wasn't performance, it was presence. 15. Carpenter and Hill wrote the script in under 2 weeks. Speed was everything. With producers eager to start, Carpenter and Deborah Hill locked themselves in a room and wrote the script in just 10 days. Hill focused on the teenage girl's dialogue, pulling from her high school memories. Carpenter focused on suspense and visuals. Their teamwork worked. The script was tight, efficient, and every scene built tension. Not a rush job, a surgical strike of horror writing. 16. The film's working title was The Babysitter Murders. Before Halloween became Halloween, the original title was The Babysitter Murders. The early concept was a series of murders happening over several nights, different girls, different houses. But producer Irwin Yablans had a better idea. Set the whole film on one night Halloween. It wasn't just a catchy title. It gave the story context, mood, and a built-in sense of dread. Halloween Night already had fear baked into it, adding a killer made it iconic. It turned a generic idea into a horror landmark. 17. Carpenter had to fight for final cut. Despite the tiny budget, even with such a low budget, Carpenter wasn't given total creative control. Producer Mustafa Akkad wanted more scares, faster pacing, tighter edits. But Carpenter pushed back. He believed in a slow burn, tension, over cheap thrills. In post-production, Carpenter re-edited scenes himself and carefully timed every scare. He also added his now legendary score. One executive admitted, "Without the music, it's nothing." Carpenter's commitment to atmosphere saved the film. Not compromise, conviction. 18. The Shape's breathing was recorded in post-production. One of the creepiest things about Michael Myers is his breathing. Slow, heavy, almost mechanical. But that sound wasn't recorded live. Nick Castle added it later in a sound booth, wearing the mask and mimicking slow, steady breathing. That muffled, claustrophobic sound gave Michael an eerie presence. Even when you couldn't see him, you heard him before you saw him. It became one of his defining traits. That breath told you he was alive and waiting. 19. Michael Myers never runs, and that was on purpose. Unlike many horror villains who chase and sprint, Michael Myers walks, slowly, deliberately, always. Carpenter made that choice early. He believed true evil doesn't rush. Michael's stillness made him terrifying. Victims could run, scream, and beg, but he always caught up, because he wasn't chasing them. He was inevitable. That slow, creeping death gave the film a mythic feeling. You weren't running from a man. You were running from fate. 20. Halloween was dismissed by critics until it became a sensation. When Halloween premiered in 1978, critics didn't love it. Some called it cheap, juvenile, or pointless. The LA Times wrote it had no redeeming social value, but word of mouth spread like wildfire. Audiences packed theaters. The scares were real. And by the time the New York Times critic Vincent Canby called it a minor classic, the film had already earned $70 million. On a $300,000 budget, it became the most profitable independent film of its time. Not instant praise, but grassroots legend. Bonus fact, Alfred Hitchcock inspired more than just Janet Leigh's casting. Hitchcock's influence wasn't just in casting Janet Leigh's daughter. His fingerprints are all over Halloween. Carpenter studied Psycho's shot structure, pacing, and suspense techniques. He admired how Hitchcock built fear, not through gore, but through timing and suggestion. Even Halloween's voyeuristic camera style was a direct nod. Carpenter once said, "I learned more from watching Hitchcock's films than from any film school." So in a way, Halloween is the ghost of Psycho, dressed in a new mask, not imitation, reincarnation. Final thought, Halloween was supposed to be disposable, a cheap scare flick to fill drive-in seats. Instead, it redefined horror. It gave birth to the slasher genre, turned a $300,000 risk into a $70 million empire, and changed how fear was filmed, all from a painted Shatner mask, a 10-day script, and a synth riff written in 5/4 time. The real boogeyman? It wasn't just the killer behind the mask. It was how close this masterpiece came to never existing at all.